12 years ago, my ex gifted me my first ever orchid, this harlequin type Phalaenopsis that's still alive and thriving. He also gifted me my third, fourth, and fifth ones, which died, just like our love. But this beautiful orchid would change my life forever and bring about an amazing addiction that I haven't been able to beat. Please help me, I'm broke. Over the last 12 years, I've killed and brought back to life just enough orchids to learn the tips and tricks I'm about to show you to keep your first orchid alive on this episode of Orquidorky. I'm Marc Mauvert, and I'm here to make it clear that orchids aren't too fussy or too hard to take care of. That's a myth. They're not like any other indoor plant though. They have specific needs that are easy enough to remember. It's very likely that your first ever orchid is a Phalaenopsis, one of the most popular and commercial orchid genera in the world. So I'm gonna focus specifically on their care. If you would like to learn about the care of other orchid genera, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Phalaenopsis, also called moth orchids, are really easy to identify. Here I have several of them. Some of these are species, some are primary hybrids, that means a hybrid between two species, and some are complex hybrids, made from mixing 3 or more species. It's probable that your first Phalaenopsis is a complex hybrid. They're the ones that big shops usually sell. They've been selected to be more vigorous, resistant, and to produce flowers as stunning as myself.
We need to get you new glasses, sweetie.
They are shade-loving plants, and they have a short stem with thick and oval-shaped leaves. They also have meaty, silvery roots when dry that turn green when they absorb moisture. They have showy and long-lasting flowers that bloom from a flower spike that appears between two leaves. Alright, let's get to it. The 7 basic needs every orchid has: light, temperature, humidity, water, air, potting, and fertilizer. Phalaenopsis are, in my opinion, the best shade-loving plants. But shade-loving is kind of a misnomer. You shouldn't leave your orchids in the shadiest room of your home. They'd rather live in low or indirect light. If you leave them under direct afternoon sun, they will get burnt. An ideal place for your Phalaenopsis orchid is an east-facing window, but it's acceptable to put them on a south or west-facing one if you move them further away from the windows or provide enough shade with curtains, blinds, or a bigger plant. If you live further north or have an overcast winter climate, you might need full south exposure. An easy way to test your light is to hold your hand about a foot over the leaves. The shadow should be blurry and barely visible. If you have a distinct shadow, your orchid might be getting too much light. In some places where the weather is mild, Phalaenopsis can handle direct light only if it's really early or very late, when the temperatures aren't that high. But keep an eye on them and feel the temperature of their leaves. They should never feel hot. If their leaves have any burn marks, put them in a shadier place. Be very careful with glass objects and mirrors. They can act as a magnifying glass and burn up your plants. You might need to protect your plants or move them around as the seasons change. Remember that the sun changes position throughout the year. Orchids with reddish and purple flowers might develop purple speckles on the underside of their leaves under high light. That's completely normal. It's like their version of getting a tan. Have you ever been to a place that's really humid, really hot, where you feel a hot flash and you ask yourself, am I going through menopause?
You look like you're close.
That's the ideal climate for Phalaenopsis. Most Phalaenopsis species come from tropical rainforests in Southeast Asia, so they are adapted to withstand temperatures between 78 and 92 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and about 10 to 15 degrees lower at night. But you don't have to turn your living room into a jungle to be able to enjoy orchids. Nowadays, commercial hybrids have been designed to tolerate a greater range of temperatures. If it feels comfy for you, it's probably comfy for them. Unless you're one of those freaks that wear shorts during winter. Keep them away from drafts and cold windows if it's too cold outside. You can use a heating mat under their pots to protect their roots from temperatures below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Or you can do what I do and have something handy that can heat you up even on the coldest of nights. A photo of Henry Cavill. And something really important. Phalaenopsis bloom according to the temperature and day length. If you want flowers, it's a must for them to experience a couple of weeks of lower temperatures and shorter days. A lot of modern hybrids were created using winter flowering species. If your house or office building has a constant temperature year-round, your orchids are never going to flower. Here in Mexico City, where I live, we experience really cloudy and rainy summers, and temperatures cool down enough for my Phalaenopsis to bloom twice a year instead of only once. Lower your thermostat for a couple of weeks or put them closer to the windows to help them spike, but never let them get too cold. Humidity will help your plants grow better and less stressed out. Maybe if I'd grown with a little bit more humidity, I wouldn't have fallen on an expensive hobby to help me out with my stress. I rue the day my ex got me addicted. I hate you, Jesus Francisco. I hate you. But giving extra humidity to Phalaenopsis isn't completely necessary unless you live in a dry or arid place or if you're heating your home during winter. For tropical plants like Phalaenopsis, your best ally is an ultrasonic humidifier. You may also use a diffuser, but you should avoid using essential oils near your plants. The tiny oil droplets might clog up their leaves. Another option is to create a microclimate by surrounding your orchids with other leafy plants and keep them all correctly watered. Or you can put your orchids inside rooms where the humidity is usually higher, like your kitchen or your bathroom. There are people that recommend putting your plants over trays with pebbles and water. That doesn't work unless you have dozens of plants above dozens of trays filled with water. You're never gonna raise the humidity and you'll only create a habitat for algae and bugs. You shouldn't spray them either. The mist will raise the humidity for a second, and you may help fungus and bacteria to get to your plant. That being said, a lot of Phalaenopsis hybrids are very resistant, and as long as there's enough moisture on the roots, they can survive in places with below average humidity. If you can, try to keep your orchids at around 50 to 60% humidity so they grow happy and stress-free. Some people have a hard time watering orchids when they first get them. Phalaenopsis are epiphytes, which means that they grow on the surface of another bigger plant. In their natural habitat, their roots are exposed to the air, and they are used to absorbing raindrops or morning dew, get fully saturated, and then slowly dry throughout the day. This cycle of wetting and drying is necessary for orchids to absorb water, nutrients, and the oxygen they need in order to grow. But we can grow them in pots, as long as we provide this natural cycle. You should water them until they are fully saturated, and then let them almost dry completely before watering them again. If they are always kept moist, air will not reach their roots and they will start to rot. An easy way to water them is to let the roots soak in a little bucket or container until fully saturated. Then, you should let them drain completely and make sure there's no water left lingering inside the pot. Wait until the media feels dry to water them again. If your orchid comes in a clear plastic pot, you can see how the roots change from silver to green when you water them, and you should wait until they look silvery again. By the way, I'm getting kind of thirsty. Some people use other methods to know when to water. One of them is by weight. Your orchid should feel a lot heavier when you water them, and you should feel the difference when they are completely dry. Or you could try filling with your fingers or a wooden skewer. Gently and carefully try to guide a skewer to the center of the pot. If it still feels moist, you should wait. I can't really tell you to water your orchids every week or every 10 days. It's gonna vary a lot. You shouldn't water them according to schedule, because your orchid will need more water during warm and dry days and less on cloudy or cold days. It will also depend on the size of your container. A smaller pot will dry faster than a large one. If your winter is really cold and cloudy, you might not need to water your orchids for a couple of weeks. It's better to observe and then decide. They are a lot hardier than we give them credit for. They are not gonna die if you keep them dry for a day or two. A couple of tips I can give you about watering. Try not to splash their leaves and flowers, and you should never leave water standing on their crown or the center of their leaves. If that happens by accident, pat them dry with a paper towel. Water droplets trapped between leaves is a perfect habitat for harmful fungi and bacteria. Try to water them early in the morning and during sunny days to minimize infections. Use filtered, distilled, or reverse osmosis water. If you wouldn't drink it, you shouldn't give it to orchids. Tap water won't damage them right away, but depending on where you live, it might contain a lot of minerals and chlorine, and orchid roots are a little bit sensitive. As I already mentioned, Phalaenopsis are epiphytes, and that is the main difference between them and other indoor plants. Other plants' roots dry up when they are exposed to air, but orchid roots have an outer layer that protects them from water loss. That layer is called velamen. It helps orchid roots grow even when exposed to fresh air. Even when the roots are adaptable and can grow in different media, they can survive in low oxygen environments. If you put them in soil, they will die. That's why it's likely that your first orchid comes potted in bark or a bark mix. Bark retains a little bit of moisture and it's airy enough to let the roots breathe. As bark is biodegradable, it will slowly decompose and you will need to change it. A good quality bark mix can last from 2 to 3 years. Many recommend repotting your Phalaenopsis when it's done flowering, cause you can't be sure how long it's been from the last time it was repotted. And some nurseries will extend the repotting process as long as possible to waste the least amount of money. Ask for help if you think your orchid needs repotting, or if you're feeling bold enough to do it yourself, I will post a video where I will show you how I do it. This is starting to remind me of Avatar. If you want your orchids to live together in harmony, you'll need to balance water, light, bark, and air. This basically means that it's great having humidity, but if the atmosphere in a room feels too stagnant, fungi and bacteria will attack more readily. If the weather allows it, open up some windows. Just don't let the wind directly hit your orchids. They might dry up or fall down. If the room feels too stale for you, it's probably too stagnant for your orchids too. It's not absolutely necessary, but if you really want to baby your orchids, you can get them a computer fan and set it in a low speed. Place it by your orchids, but try not to put it blowing directly to them. You could use a ceiling fan as well. Keep it turned on at its lowest setting. There are a lot of videos here on YouTube and discussions about fertilizers, but if you just bought your first orchid, don't worry too much about it. Fertilizing is a must once your plant starts growing, as it is essential for healthy growth and flowering. But even then, orchids need a tiny amount of fertilizer compared to other houseplants, especially Phalaenopsis, that grow really slowly. If you already have a preferred fertilizer for your other plants, you could use it, but at a lower dosage or you might burn up the roots. A good rule of thumb is to use 1/4 of the recommended amount of fertilizer. If you want to make life easier, look for a fertilizer specially designed for orchids, like MSU Orchid Fertilizer if you can get it where you live, and follow the instructions. But don't fret, your orchids won't die if you don't fertilize it immediately. You have plenty of time to gather information and choose the type of fertilizer that best suits your needs.
I know who. I want to fertilize me.
And lastly, be aware that your orchid flowers won't last forever. It's normal for the flowers to wither and fall eventually. It doesn't mean that your orchid is dying. If you follow all of these instructions, your flowers will last a long time. Keep them in a safe place, away from threats and pets. Enjoy the flowers and remember that your orchid will keep blooming next year as long as you keep the leaves and roots healthy. Okidoki, that's all for today's video. Congratulations on getting your first orchid. You'll find that they are easier to care than what people give them credit for. And you will want to get another one, and another one, and another one. And it will become an addiction, and you won't be able to escape. Welcome to the world of orchids. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and ring the bell. Leave me a comment if you have any questions or ideas for a new video. See you soon on the next episode of Orchidorky. Bye bye!